Testudos. Topic: the outlaw, in brackets, Guy Guston. When we talk of an outlaw, we're talking of somebody who is a criminal, somebody who does not adhere to the rule of law. And even in the past, there used to be such a kind of people. They would not toe the line. They would not follow the law. And during our father's time, because my father learned during the colonial times, they had to learn the British history. And there was an outlaw called Robin Hood. I saw it in his history books. And there was also a time when we read some storybooks, tales. And there was the story of Robin Hood in Sherwood Forest, Nottingham. And this was a robber who would rob from the rich and give the money to the poor. The poor liked him. They would welcome him with his men who are always happy, merry men. And he was good at shooting arrows. We would equal him today to today's sharpshooters. And people enjoyed having Robin Hood around because he was able to equalize, share the property that the nobles and the rich had kept for themselves, impoverishing the poor. But during those days when we were young, this size, we would go to watch movies, and watching a movie was an interesting occasion because TVs were a rare thing. A rare thing. Maybe secondary schools, boarding secondary schools had a TV in the dining hall, and some few homes had TVs black and white. So it was rare to watch TVs. But the government that time, the Ministry of Social Services, had taken care of that situation. They knew people would buy radios, small radios, where they would use batteries. By then, people used to call those radios wireless. So you don't interfere with somebody at 1 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the evening when the elders are listening to the wireless. You were to be silent as they listen to the news. That was the time when everybody in the country knew the broadcasters because there was only one station, Voice of Kenya. And it was interesting because the radio would begin at 5 in the morning to start with the national anthem. And it will close at, is it midnight? Exactly at midnight with the national anthem. In the night, those who are interested in news would tune on BBC African Service, Kiswahili or English, and you will listen to the news. But the Ministry of Social Services that time had this good plan to at least entertain people. So in the place where we used to live, even when we would come down these sides to our ancestral land, there were movies, and you would watch movies twice a month. And watching a movie was an interesting affair because there would come a vehicle pulling a trailer and had some metal rods where they would put a white cloth, and then one vehicle, the trailer would be moved at a distance, and then the vehicle at a distance, and a generator, because electricity was not in many places. Then the generator would start running, and the projector would start projecting the movie on that white screen. That time we were all seated down, and the children were not supposed to make noise. The grown-ups stood at the back so that there was no interference with people watching this wonderful thing called a movie. And we liked the cowboy movies. Wild, Wild West. And because we belong to Western Kenya, I told you near our home place, there were American missionaries, very good people. Americans are very open, very friendly. I saw them when I was young, and I've met with several. Americans are very good people. So we would want to imitate what was happening in America. We wanted, when we were young, our dream was the American life, the good life. And by then, they were showing cowboys. That time, we didn't know that the Americans had gone far beyond the cowboys. They were very modernized. We would be shown those movies, and that time we would think that that was what was exactly happening. People riding horses, and the sheriff comes to town, and there is this outlaw, and there's a shootout, and the sheriff was always the winner. And an outlaw was a bad guy. But in the British one, an outlaw like Robin Hood was a good guy. So I could not understand what a good outlaw and a bad outlaw meant. It was confusing. But when I started learning the Bible, then I realized, oh, there can't be a good outlaw. Because there was one called Samson, and the people celebrated him. And when he fell, the people mourned him. An outlaw, but a good outlaw to some, and a bad outlaw to others. Then when I was reading these books, I talked to, because my mom taught me most of the reading, I talked to her, and she told me about outlaws, and I asked her if there ever had been an outlaw, and she said yes. In the western part of our country, one time there was an outlaw. And asked outlaw, like Robin Hood? She told me no, of a different kind. An outlaw that was feared. People would not even mention his name. He would do all the bad things, and nobody would talk about. In fact, it was scaring just to mention the name Guy Guston. And if you wanted to cause fear in a place, you just tell them, haha, if you continue with that, I will ensure that Guy Guston visits this place. People would ask for peace, and that was the end of that thing. He was an outlaw. He had his gang of men, and he did many evil things. Those were the years when girls were protected by their uncles and brothers. They would go to school and come back. They would go to the river, but the boys heading the cows and the uncles who are young, almost their age, were always protective. Because if a girl got involved in an affair, it was difficult for her to get married, and she would be a disgrace to the family. And you know, affairs that time were not these things that we talk about. Somebody would come and force himself on her. And that having happened, the person to be blamed was never the man, it was the girl. So the brothers and everybody would take care so that nobody would misbehave with a girl from your family. So this outlaw decided to be carrying out such activities because he was feared he would go and pick people from places and move on with them. And people that time lived in fear. It was difficult also for people to go after him because he was operating a mafia-like thing. I think that was a time of mafia in Europe. So they had emulated, because these things were coming by, exactly what the mafia would do. So if you went against him, he made sure you were a lesson to be learned by others. So people trembled. But one time, he decided to do just what I've said, because he was feared. He would go to a home and say, I will even pick some of the girls, tell that one to follow me, and people would fear. And you know, it was a disgrace to the family. So one time he went to another family and thought it was business as usual. So he came and people trembled and people shivered, and Guy Guston said, you go, follow me. And the brother, because of the honor of the family, said, no girl is following you. The guy was surprised. He was surprised. How can anybody challenge Guy Guston? Because people knew him as Guy Guston, the bad guy. He said, can you repeat again? He said, exactly what you've heard. I am the brother. I am her protector. So she goes nowhere. Nobody can defame our family when I'm there. You have to go through me first to get to her. Guy Guston, being a tough guy, a thug that was feared, asked, you challenge me? And the guy says, I don't challenge you. I challenge the evil you want to do. So, just move the way you came, because no girl is leaving this home. And the guy said, okay. He had a machete. Then he told him, then you will learn the lesson of challenging Guy Guston himself. I wish it were any of the people who move with me. But me, you challenge me? And the guy said, no girl is leaving this compound. And Guy Guston made a move to go and grab her. And the guy came out, and a fight ensued. And this guy was attacking with a panga, a machete. This guy, the young man, went for a spear. And the fight ensued. Righteousness against evil. And everybody thought the young man was dead. In fact, they knew that was the end of him. But he fought and fought. And eventually, he got a chance and speared the guy. And for the first time, even Guy Guston was in shock. As he went down, he said, you have surely won. You've won. You've won. It was a surprise to all of them. The girl was preserved. The family was preserved. The area got rid of this guy. Eventually, the group scattered. But they had had a reign of terror for some time. What am I talking about? I'm talking about this life that we live in. We are always afraid because there are those strongholds. There are those entities that pursue their issues by threats and evil. And the way Jesus said, and the way the Quran said, sometimes it's good to take a stand and say, evil shall not prevail. I will stand in between good and evil, and I will be the side of good, the side of justice. This guy stood up to the test that nobody in that village, nobody in that area would have done. I'm talking of great heroes. I talked of Gideon. I talked of a teacher in Eldoret. A teacher? No, an MP who stood up to people who were doing organ trade on people. I've talked of different people in Kenya who have stood up to things. Different people in East Africa who have stood up to things. And we are always put in a place where you are afraid. Sometimes everything goes haywire. But if we could only raise our voice and say something, it is scary. Sometimes the people you are to talk against, you know that after that word, you may not take long to live. But with God's grace, if 2, 3, 4 people talked, some of the evil, the things that we are always complaining, they're happening, will not be happening. Because people stretch further when they know that they can be able to intimidate. You will say nothing. So I make a step, you say nothing. I make 2 steps, you say nothing. I make 3 steps, and then now evil becomes the norm. And who will talk about it? Everybody is afraid. So if somebody does evil, asks you, is it good? You say, very good. That is what has been happening. And that is what has been happening around the world. We call upon world citizens, world civilians, wherever you are. Be a voice. Because the Quran says, if you see evil, stop it, if you can. If you can't stop it, talk against it. The Bible says you should avoid people who are evil and be against evil. Talk. I like the advert that is in public vehicles in Kenya. There used to be many accidents, and they put something for the passengers down there in the vehicles. You see, if the driver is overspeeding or driving recklessly, please speak up, because many people have lost their lives because the vehicles being driven recklessly, they never talked. In the areas where I stay around the world, things may be going amiss. And those who make things go amiss will get praises from you. So sometimes they think that is what pleases you. And when everything has gone haywire, you end up blaming other people. I always refer to a country like Rwanda. Things were brewing up and everybody would see. Nobody talked until when lives had been lost. And a hero had come fighting to the rescue of the people of Rwanda. I call him a hero. Some people have said many bad things about him, but to me, that man is an asset to that country, a blessing. God bless him. Paul Kagame. He came during a time when nobody would stand that. The world had left Rwanda to perish. That was the truth. 800,000 people in 3 months, and the world was still debating. That's almost half the population. Was it half of the Tutsis? Almost. And the world was still debating. I liked when Evariste, the president of Burundi, said the people in Burundi, because the two presidents came down, the plane they were in was short, not short, got into an accident or whatever. Nobody has come up, went down together, and the two presidents passed on. But there was fire in Rwanda. In Burundi, it just started, and the people, because they talked. I liked Evariste when he had gone to the inauguration of Her Excellency Suluhu in Tanzania. He said they made a choice. They talked. So it's always a time when you have to make a choice and talk. Because if you don't, and if people don't put out their voices, that's when the country burns. And you say we saw, but what did you do about it? You don't have to be powerful. You don't have to have wealth. But if you get a platform, please talk. When something is evil, just say it's evil. Say it's evil, because you'll be threatened with many consequences. But put out your voice. It's better than keeping quiet and everything burns. And if you survive, you have fled, you are a refugee, you say, but we saw it coming. We couldn't talk. Nobody could talk. You are a person. You could talk. So, to the rest of the world, there are many changes going on. We talked, this is about dharma, good and evil happening around the world. Choose. When there is good, will you be on the side of good, or will you be on the side of evil? And evil, when it takes place and you're around and you're quiet, it means you are also a participant, a supporter of that evil. So people around the world, wherever you are, make voices in your countries, everywhere, when something is going wrong. When something is going good, why not comment your systems and your governments? Tell them they're doing right, so that they also feel happy doing the right thing. But when evil comes, talk. Be like this man who, for the first time, fought for the honor of the family and was able to stop a terror that everybody feared, just mentioning the name. Be strong, be brave. God will be with you. Take faith, because I said there's nothing stronger than faith. That's my take for now.